What is up, guys? Protobro here, infamous brother to Mega Bro. Going to continue on with this tutorial series of Crusader Kings 2. In this video, I'm going to show you a couple different things. First, army composition. Essentially, how do you determine what your army composition is? How do you modify it? How do you so on and so forth? Next is how do you expand your kingdom via forces of arms. There's a couple different ways to do that. And then finally, and this is going to be the more advanced part, and so for those of you who've played this game before, you may actually learn perhaps some new stuff, or it may just be a refresher and remind you if it's been a while since you've been away from the game. Battle mechanics. So how do we determine battle mechanics? How do we shape our army in such a way to maximize battle mechanics? All that fun stuff. So first and foremost is how the heck do you even get an army, right? So as a count, even as like Devon here, you have an army. You start off with an army in every Crusader Kings game you start off with, right? So how do you determine what that is? First, the total number, and then two, what makes up that number. And so first, if you go up to the military tab here, notice these are full numbers. These are like your macro, right? So for the Kingdom of England, we can raise 36,000 troops, 25,000 from our own kingdom, rather our own rule as William the Conqueror, and then another 11,000 from our vassals. So again, it's a feudal society, right? So the people living in the county of Devon, he, for all intents and purposes, is their ruler, right? And then he reports to us. And then the 25,000, those are all the people who report directly to us. And how do you figure that out? Well, if you go into direct vassals, and it's going to vary depending on your Let's Play and all that sort of things, but currently within all these red territories here, which we, William the Conqueror, own, and not anybody else, and if you notice here, here's the Kingdom of England, all this territory. But as far as land that we personally own, that we control, that nobody else can dictate what happens to it, all this here, that makes up 25,000. Right? Now that'll go down as you give away counties. Right? So you'd think, well, why do I want to give away counties then? Wouldn't I want to control as many counties as possible? No, you don't. Up here, this number, this 21 out of 7, we're supposed to only have 7 counties in our possession at any given time. We're way above that, and so our tax collecting is going to be taking a major hit because we're not as efficient. And then also we have a huge opinion hit from all our different vassals for having too many lands. So it's definitely an advantage to only possessing the number of counties that you can actually possess effectively, which in our case would be 7. So if I was actually playing this game as William the Conqueror, first thing I would do is I'd give away most of my counties, so I'd only have 7 in my possession. And then that's the number you'd have right here is the 7 counties, how many troops you could raise. And the rest is your vassals, so your vassals can raise 11,000 troops. Where does this 11,000 come from? It all comes from right here. So these are all your vassals right here. And then what you can do is you can kind of go through and figure out who's giving you what. Opinion is very important in this game, and I'll give you a good illustration. So see Duke Morcar of York? He's the one that owns all this orange right here. He's only given us 458 troops. Right, so he's given us the bare minimum he's required to by law. So our law is currently for feudal obligations the minimum, which means if feudal lords under our laws of England need to provide us 10% of their levy in times of war. So there's levies and there's vassals, or garrison troops. There's levies and garrisons. Levies are your offensive, they're the ones that actually take the field in times of battle and war. Your garrison's the one that stay in your castle, I'll go to that in a second. But your vassal obligations under your law tab, under obligations, is going to dictate how many troops your vassals provide you. So there's feudal, which is the one I just showed you. There's also clergy. So if you go under here, your bishop, how many troops he's going to provide you. Or like right here, we'd actually put someone in charge of this. He would end up being like he would be a bishop, and it would dictate how many. So how many troops they would provide you would be based on clergy obligations. So right now they're only obligated by law to provide 10%, no more. So that's what he's doing. He's saying, hey, I'm only going to give you 10% of my total troops. Now, notice here, this guy is just a count, which means he only owns these 2 counties right here. So he owns half the number of counties, and he's only a count, he's not a duke. And yet he's giving us 728 troops. He's given almost twice as many as Duke of Morcar. Why? Because he likes us a heck of a lot more. So he has 24 opinion of us, he has negative 66. Notice the modifier there. He could provide at most 1,800 troops. He's currently providing 39%. He's only providing 10%. Again, because of that opinion. So that's one of the reasons why you want to kind of keep this down, because you do take a major opinion hit for having way more counties than you're supposed to. Alright, so that's the vassals. This is how you figure out the numbers that are coming, and then, you know, if you wanted to even further break down, you can see they're highlighting over light infantry, heavy infantry, pikemen, light cavalry, so forth. Okay. Now, as far as your composition, your 25,000, where does that number come from? Well, it comes from each individual county that you yourself currently own or control. So let's take here Middlesex, for example. Usually, your lord, or the person you're playing as, is only going to be in control of the county seat. So this is basically the county capital, rather county seat, the capital seat, the capital of the county. So Westminster is the capital of Middlesex County. And then you have a couple barons underneath you. So you get this baron here, barony of Tottenham. That's a second castle within this county of Middlesex. You've got a bishop, and you got a city, so a mayor. Each one of these are your vassals because they fall directly underneath you in basically, for lack of a better term, chain of command, right? So what will happen is we're not going to focus on these guys because these are all vassals. They're not actually you. This is you. If you look at the left side here, this will tell you what you actually own. We don't own this, we don't own that, we don't own this. You go here, we own this, we don't own that, we don't own that. And then if you hover over it, it'll tell you how many levies you can provide. So 1,500 for Middlesex County is how many we would raise. And it'll tell you the breakdown of that 1,500 troops. So you get 1,500 there, you get 1,300 there, 1,400 there, and so on, for a grand total of 25,000. So that's just your breakdown of your total overall. Right now, what if you have a certain army composition that you want to throw together? So say you want just a boatload of heavy knights, or you want a bunch of heavy infantry, or you want a bunch of archers, like we're going to want to have, and I'll explain that in a second. Then under here you can actually modify these numbers through the building, through buildings. So what you can do here is, for example, under the militia training ground, if you were to build this, the county of Middlesex, this little holding right here would produce 10 more archers, as well as 80 more light infantry. So it would make 31, and then about 470 approximately up here for this holding. And then what would happen additionally is that your barons will do the same thing as they build new buildings in these different areas here. Then these numbers here will change. So notice we're clicked on this castle here. These are the numbers of troops that he can max out raise. You obviously wouldn't get all of these, but you might get, you know, a good percentage if he has high loyalty towards you. Now what you can do is you can actually go in and build things in your vassals' territory. So your barons, for example, so I could go here and I could be like, I want you to have more archers, and so I'm going to build that. My rule of thumb is usually I only build within my areas though, because I never know when this guy's going to rise up against me, and I don't want him to use those troops against me. It's a little safer with its barons, right? But I was trying to upgrade here in the capital first and then these second. But anyways, bottom line up front, you click on your county capital, you go into these building areas, and you can build additional buildings that will increase the number of a particular type of troop that you want. All right. Now this is important because depending on the culture that your battlefield commander is, so in this case, say it's Anglo-Saxon. If an Anglo-Saxon commander is on the battlefield, he has certain special abilities he could trigger for the troops he's leading. In his case, Anglo-Saxon or Welsh have the ability to give your archers basically special abilities for your archers. And so what you'd want to do is, if you're going to have mainly Anglo-Saxon or Welsh commanders, you're going to want to have a lot of archers in your army to maximize the opportunity for that archer effect to trigger. So what I've included in the description of this video is the combat tactics kind of breakdown that shows you all the different combat tactics that can trigger in a battle. Use that as kind of a waypoint to figure it out. So a good example is if you're playing as the Norse, for example, or the Germans. I think it's the Germans. Definitely know it's the Norse. Or the Irish. They are heavy infantry specific. So they get special triggered abilities for heavy infantry. One of which, at least for the Norse, is what's called the Berserker Charge. So if your leader is Northern Germanic or Norse, and you have at least 1% heavy infantry in a particular flank. So let me show you a flank really quick here. So you click here to raise these troops right here. So each one of these is a flank. I always thought flanks is the left and the right and the center. No, these are all flanks. Okay, but if you have at least 1% heavy infantry, which it looks like we do, we have. Is he a Norse? Might be. He's Norman. Okay, but if this guy was a Northern Germanic leader and he had 1% heavy infantry, then he might get what's called the Berserker Charge, which means heavy infantry get 360% increase on their offensive abilities, which is huge, right? It's a huge maximizer in battle. So just be aware that what culture your leader is or commanders are, and then try and tailor the army in such a way where you're able to maximize those things. And I will show you how to do that in a few. Okay. Alright, so that's your Army Levies tab. That's your overall, your minor. How do we figure out the Levin? We go through here, we look. I'll just tell you who's giving you what. It's going to be modified based on the opinions and also by the law of what's being obligated. So here it's only 10%. You can see if you can get it higher. You're going to have to run that through your council, which means you're going to have to do a vote. So if you don't have enough people in your council that like you, or enough vassals that like you, maybe this law doesn't get passed. But again, we're looking at what vassals are required by law as well as opinion to provide you. In this case, he's by law 10%, but he also is providing 63% of his total troops because he really likes us, which means he really wants to support our endeavors. And then the 25,000, which is from the counties we hold, which can then further be modified by going to the different holdings within your counties, clicking them, and then obviously up to building, building new buildings that'll increase the size. Right now, notice here with the keep, it's plus 10% levy, plus 10% garrison. And now recall I mentioned a few minutes ago there's a difference between levies and garrisons. Here's your garrison, 758. Here's your levy. These are your offensive troops. These are your defensive. These are the troops that are going to defend your county when it's being besieged. So 758 really isn't that big of a number. And so what we may want to do is increase that number by building a keep, which would increase that by 10%. So we'd add, what, another 75 troops, I think, to that? That means that if we had our levies here in garrison and we had our garrison, these numbers combine against the enemy who's trying to siege us. And the only way to begin a siege, to start tearing down the defenses and actually winning a siege, is you have to have more troops sieging the castle than they have in garrison or levy combined, right? So if we have only 758 troops garrisoned, then if we were the attacking army, we would need to have 760 or 759 offensive troops before we could actually start sieging this county. Otherwise, we might take some money down, but we wouldn't actually do any damage to the castle or ever actually seize this holding. And then bear in mind too that you will lose troops through a siege, so 759 troops will probably not last you very long before you're below 759, and then all of a sudden can no longer take the fight to the enemy, so to speak, and start actually taking down the walls and taking this county. Since I'm talking about sieges, notice here this bar right here. This basically dictates, think of this as the castle wall, okay? This means that, you can basically siege another county and take money all the way down to here, and then it stops. So that means whatever's on this side is going to be protected. All the coin that's on this side is going to be protected. So the more things you build, like more castle fortifications that you build, for example, makes that 6.5, which then means this is going to actually go up higher. So it's just a way to kind of keep so that people can get less money from you when they're sieging you, or less money from you when they're raiding. That's what this indicates right here. Alright, so now we've talked about army composition. What are some of the other ways to dictate your army composition? Well, one of them is retinues, right here. What is a retinue? A retinue is basically a standing army. They're professional soldiers or a standing army. They cost a little bit. They're cheaper to maintain than troops than your levies that you actually raise. So for example, here we can build 300 levy for 126 coin. Counts, dukes, kings can all have levies, or rather retinues. The catch is that you can only have up to what's provided here. So our cap is 5.1 thousand, so 5,000 troops. That's a very large levy army. However, notice there it says from realm 576, buildings 400, technology 400%. And so your technology, the size of your realm, and the number of buildings that you own under you is going to dictate the size of your retinue. So if you're a count who has one county and not a whole lot of technology, you know, maybe your retinue size can only be 150. Well, if the lowest retinue you can build is 300, you're not going to be able to build a retinue. You know, you're going to have to at least get up to 300 right here before you can actually build one, right? So again, we talked about, you know, he's Norman, so he's not going to get the bonus right now, but if he was Anglo-Saxon, he would get an archer bonus potentially in the battle phase, and so we'd also obviously want more archers than not. So we're going to build, there we go, there's our retinue, and they're just going to kind of build up over time. And then what you do is you can dictate the speed with which it rebuilds. So right now, we've got a current retinue cap of 750. And it's going to tell you the cost of him, 2.43 maintenance, which is a lot cheaper actually than having your troops raised, but still going to cost you money. And then what you can do is if you get to a certain size and you don't want to have to spend any more money on it, you can actually turn it off right here. So it's only 18 to build up that army, only 1.3 to build up that army, or 2.43. As you can see, our income is 29, so that 2.43 doesn't hurt us all that much. But if you were a duke or a count, you know, 2.43 may actually put you in the red. And so maybe you'd want to go with 131, which means it'll rebuild slower, but at least you wouldn't be in the red up here. Okay. Final thought as to army composition here before we move on. Always, if I'm going to foot stomp this, is a big tip. Whenever possible, just raise your vassals. Don't raise yourself. Or if you raise yourself, just raise, you know, some of your armies. So here you click this tab. This will raise everybody. If you hold the control key when you do this, what it'll do is it will not raise troops in the county that is being that has hostile forces in it. So if you got a guy blitzing through with 5,000 troops, you're not going to raise a county that only has 1,000 because you're probably going to lose that 1,000 troops, right? So if you hold control, then when you raise your troops, it won't raise in that particular county. But if you raise, what you could do is you say, you know what, I don't want all these guys. He's got, let's see, he's got cavalry. Sweet. You know, say we don't want to raise these guys. All right. Don't want these guys back. So you only raise some. So we've only raised 18,000 out of our 25,000 now. That'll save you some money in terms of how much it's going to cost you on the monthly balance, right? All right. And then notice too, even though we highlighted all the troops and disbanded them, our retinue is still here. Our retinue is always a standing army. But always raise your vassals because you don't have to pay for your vassals. Your vassals pay for their own troops. So it's a good way to have a raised army dealing with a war or civil war or conflict without actually costing you any money. You'll find that one of the difficulties in this game is having a raised army while at the same time maintaining some sort of coin in your coffers. One of the ways to do that is just have your vassals raised and then raise your own army whenever you kind of need to, but try not to, because then you're not going to be spending any money on a raised army. It's also a good way to keep your vassals weak so that they can't raise up their troops against you and use them against you, right? Because if you're constantly keeping them engaged in conflicts and lowering their own numbers, they'll have less troops to use against you. Now the kicker, the one downside to doing that, is that if your vassals' troops are raised for too long, their opinion of you will drastically plummet, and then they're going to be pissed off with you for a good amount of time. So keep track of that, and it'll tell you up here when that's happening. But wherever possible, only raise your vassals. And when you raise your own troops, if you press the control key when you raise them, it will not raise troops in counties where they're being engaged or sieged or have a hostile force going through, because then you may lose those troops just from getting picked off. Right? And then finally, you've got mercenaries and holy orders. Mercenaries just cost money. You hire them, right? You can click the commander. It'll tell you the different options. This guy's awesome because he's a brilliant strategist, and he has a flanking option here. These are combat modifiers, which we'll talk about in a second. But you can do it by cost, total strength, so total force here, 4,000 troops, so on and so forth. And then it'll also tell you the monthly cost is 30 a month. And then you click them and it'll tell you who they are as far as their stuff. And then holy orders. So as the game goes on, more holy orders will develop. As if you're Catholic country, or yeah, Catholic faith, then you'll see holy orders here. And what that means is that if like say the Norse declare war on you as a holy crusade against you for to expand their faith, or a crusade is conducted against the Muslims, or there's a jihad by the Muslims against Catholics, you might be able to borrow a holy order to fight on behalf of you or defend you until that war is over. So just be aware of that option. Alright, and then fleet levy is pretty self-explanatory, same thing. You can raise your vassals or just yours. Again, raising ships costs money, so if you only raise your vassal ships, it's not going to cost you many money to do it. And it'll tell you right here how much it costs. After, I think, like a month, I think. Okay. I don't know what happened to our retinue. Okay. Alright, so we talked about army composition, how to build up your army, your vassal composition, mercenaries, retinues, holy order. Now, how do we expand our kingdom? So we've talked about this a little bit in some other videos, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but there's a couple different ways. The first way is enforcing your actual claims, your own personal claims. So notice here, we as King William of the Conqueror have lots of claims on counties. Now these are all within our kingdom, so we're not going to war deck anybody for them. But if, say, one of these counties was in Wales, for example, that we had here, then we, William the Conqueror, could actually push our own claims to get those. Another way is to push somebody else's claim. So if we had, you know, say someone in your court who had a claim on the county of Gwent, then we could push that claim. So we could push a claim on behalf of somebody else. We can also do what's called, again, de jure claims. So in this case, the Kingdom of England is this, but if you click de jure, it also includes Cumbria. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to actually declare war on Scotland to take Cumbria, and the casus belli, or the cause for war to take Cumbria, is based on the fact that this is actually a part of traditional England. Now note that de jure claims will kind of what's the word? Will drift over time, and so I want to say there's a tab here that will tell you that. Traditionally considered a part of Kingdom of England, but doesn't tell you. There was a way for you to tell over time. I think if you put it over here, it'll tell you the drift. So it'll basically tell you how many more years until it will become a part of Scotland rather than England. But it's a good amount of time. It's like 50 or 100 years or something. It's a long time. But anyways, the whole point of this is you have de jure claims that you can push, and that's one of the most effective ways, in my opinion, to push claims to war. And so, for example, one of the ways to do that, let's get rid of that, is to usurp a title and then push a de jure claim. So how do we do that? So, for example, here we've got this count. His county falls under the Duchy of Alencon, but we don't have this. This is not created yet. It doesn't exist. So let's create it. Alright. So now, as long as you have 51% of a duchy, which we have 66%, you can actually push the de jure claim of that county or that duchy into war. So we could either give this guy, so we could either do this, we could either go de jure claim on purse now, because we have more than 51% of this duchy, which means we now push the de jure claim, because we are right now the Duke of this area right here, so we'd actually be pushing our own claim at this point. Or what we can do is we can give him the Duchy of Alencon. Boom. Alright. And again, push his claim. So, de jure claim on that. We'd take that on his behalf. It would expand our kingdom out, but we would also get it. So, that's a way to do it as de jure. Pushing your own claims, pushing other people's claims. And then holy wars are another way, so you can declare holy war as long as you're declaring war on an enemy who is of a different religion. So like the Nordics up here, maybe it went ask for permission to declare war. You can go to the Pope for that. The Pope's like, yeah, sure, go declare war, expand the Catholic faith into the heathen lands. That's another way. So in this case, we're going to go over and declare war for Cumbria. Alright, so now we're going to go into battle composition here, or actual battle mechanics here. De jure claim on Cumbria. So now we can do it one of two ways. Okay. So we can either become, notice here it'll say, King William the Conqueror gains advantage of Cumbria. The reason we can do that is because it's part of the Kingdom of England, and we are a King of England. Or we can do it for this guy, for the Duke. And the reason is that this land here is a part of his de jure duchy. So let me show you. De jure. Maybe it's this guy. No. So this is part of his de jure duchy, even though it doesn't show it that way. I think maybe because we do this here. Yeah, here we go. Duchy. Here we go. So this guy here is actually the duchy of this here too. He's got two duchies. And so we'd be pushing his claim for him. Now, what's the reason to do that? Well, if we're going to give away that county anyways, because we have way too many, unless we had somebody in mind, maybe we want to give it to him. Because if we gave it to him, his opinion of us would drastically improve. And so maybe that's one way to do it. Right now, the downside is now we have a duke who's got two duchies, lots of land, so he's more powerful, and so it could become a problem. But it could improve his opinion of us. See, it says Duke Morker's opinion of King William changes by 50 for 240 months, so a very long time. However, he has a minus 66 opinion of us, so it's, you know, we'd still be in the red there. Maybe he'd go into the positives once we got this down to 7, you know, those sort of things. But those things to consider. But we're going to press a claim for ourselves here just to do it. Now notice the entire Kingdom of Scotland now we are at war with, just for this one county. And then if we were to raise all of our levies, these are our vassals, this will not cost us anything, okay? But if we raise all of our troops, it obviously will cost us a lot. So we're just going to grab these guys here and go there. And then I'm just going to lower those. I don't feel like transporting them. And let's go here. Let's get this sped up. And by the way, this is your de jure claim. So this is how you can kind of figure out, just with, you know, without having to like click around, you can just do this and it'll tell you, right? So there, we click that. Because we created this duchy and we have more than 51%, we can press this de jure claim there. You can also do what I was saying, usurp. So if we had, if France actually owned this duchy here and had that duchy there, and we had 2 territories, we could usurp his duchy, which means basically take it from him, give it to us like this, and then use it to enforce the de jure claim. So that's another way to do it. While these troops move up here, these troops are led by commanders. So if you scroll to the bottom here under your minor titles, or if you click this little trophy thing, these are all the different guys that will actually lead your forces in battle. And so you can change that around. You can basically say, no, I don't really want him. He kind of sucks. Let's give, you know, this guy right here. He's got, you know, combat modifiers. So let's just make him, you know, this guy. So notice here, these people, these combat modifiers that they have will pop up right here if they have them. This guy doesn't have it. This guy doesn't have it. He doesn't have it. He's got skilled tactician 16, so that's pretty good. So you always look at the far left here first and see if they have a martial skill, which is this red, and then look at these skills here, martial skill, and then look at their individual traits, and they'll tell you what kind of modifiers. So notice brave here gives them moral defense of 10% in battle, and a personal combat skill of +1 plus a +2 martial. But then let's see here. Let's look at this guy, Sloth. He doesn't actually affect. It's not affected in battle. Where's a good one here? One character trait I never put on the battlefield if at all possible is Craven. I'll show you why. Right here. Minus 10% morale defense. My experience has been, at least with CK2+, that when you have a guy in the battlefield with Craven, his morale just plummets from the start of the battle forward. So Alright, so we're not going to modify this around too much, but just wanted to show you these are the commanders. These are the guys who actually lead your forces in battle that you would actually have at the flanks, including yourself and then also your marshal. Right? So as long as he's not doing some training of some sort, then he can actually take the field. So if you're looking for him and he's not here, it's because you've got him doing something here. Now notice, having our 25,000 troops, so we have 2,000 or 20,000 in the field right now. It's costing us 47 a month. So really expensive to have your own troops in the field, right? So that's why I was saying, wherever possible, just have your vassals in the field, because they're not going to cost you a penny. As you can see here, not costing us anything, costing us 78. It's a lot of money. All right.